Bare knuckle boxing may have died in 1892 when John L. Sullivan strapped on the gloves and fought and lost to gentleman James Corbett. But in 2024, it has returned and is alive and well. If you remember our third episode of Fight Finders, we went and visited with Ike Villanueva as he was fighting for the heavyweight title at BYB. Now he's fighting for John L. Sullivan's previous title.
My name's Scott Burt. I'm the president of the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame in Belfast, New York, and it's housed in John L. Sullivan's 1889 training barns, where he trained for the famous Sullivan-Kilrain fight. It went 75 rounds, 2 hours and 16 minutes outside in 104-degree Hattiesburg weather.
The Boston Strong Boy himself, John L. Sullivan, is known as the first ever recognized heavyweight champion in boxing. The lineal champion, the man who beat the man. John L. Sullivan to Jack Dempsey to Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson to Alexander Usyk today. He is the original man. Now, John L. Sullivan has a lot of ties to New Orleans, where BYB was bringing back the Police Gazette belt. His last bare knuckle fight against Jake Kilrain was supposed to be held in New Orleans, but had to move it due to the authorities. Then, once he strapped up the gloves to fight the Queensberry rules, John L. Sullivan lost his title to James Corbett in New Orleans. Now, being from Louisiana, going to New Orleans all my life, and hearing that BYB was not only coming to New Orleans with Ike Villanueva, who we've talked about in the past, but they were also bringing back the belt of John L. Sullivan, the Police Gazette title, I was incredibly excited to be able to get to witness this part of history. The sport of bare knuckle boxing is returning to what it once was, and I was excited to be able to document it. So now we're going to my home state of Louisiana to see what we can find out about John L. Sullivan. This led us to the Ogden Museum of Southern Art in New Orleans. If you're ever in town, please go check it out, because we have this fantastic portrait of the man himself from the 1800s, John L. Sullivan. John L. Sullivan was the first superstar in American sports. He started an entire business of journalism and made professional boxing what it is today.
So in the early 80s, John L. Sullivan was set to box Jake Kilrain and was supposed to be in New Orleans. The authorities of the boxing didn't like bare knuckle boxing anymore, so instead they had to move from New Orleans all the way up to north into Mississippi to stage this fight. After the fight, the two both got arrested for obviously breaking the law. So this is The Strong Boy by Achille Peretti. This was painted in like 1892, and it's not known if this was before he lost his title or after he lost his title to Jim Corbett. But what this is The Strong Boy itself. That's John L. Sullivan, the first ever boxing champion. The first heavyweight champion, the lineal champion, the man that everybody had to beat after that. This painting right here is a testament to Jim Corbett fighting in New Orleans, taking the title from John L. Sullivan. John L. Sullivan's start to how he made sports journalism what it is. He was the first real sports superstar. This is the first person that captivated American minds, and this is his legacy.
With Ike Villanueva being the defending champion, I wanted to go down to his camp and see what a champion's camp would look like. If you remember, we did go see him in Fight Finders 003, but I wanted to see how he's progressed, how his training partners have changed, and how he was approaching this fight differently as the champion instead of the challenger. So we returned to Main Street Boxing in Houston, Texas, and we saw familiar faces like Christian Steed.
Yes sir, took my first amateur fight, 1-0, you know what I'm saying? Long, bro, we gonna see where we go, and it was a good time, man.
What you learn?
Honestly, dog, it was to be able to accept the fight. You know what I'm saying? You're not always gonna be able to be in a position, because I'm still learning to always bring it and give it. So I got to be able to always accept where I'm at and be able to be aware of like what's going on around me in the ring and outside the ring. You know what I'm saying?
Now, being in camp with Christian the first time and seeing how he fought with Ike and trained him in the grappling portion, and seeing this now, I can see just how much trouble and hell he put Ike Villanueva through, and he would need it going into this fight to win the Police Gazette title, the original title held by John L. Sullivan. The training day was a hard one. The gym, as usual, was so hot. It was miserable, but Ike and his team put in so much work. When fight night came, I was in New Orleans. I was watching history return to New Orleans, and I couldn't have been more excited.
The Police Gazette, we have revived, and of course, as you know, it started in 1881. Its first fight was Sullivan versus Patty Ryan, 1882, and that was in Mississippi City, Mississippi. I've been right to the exact spot. That's where 5,000 people paid to get there, and it was such an important event at the time that the great Jesse James and his brother Frank came in disguise to get into that fight.
Ike Villanueva and his team knew what they had to do, and they knew what they were up against. Gustavo Trujillo was a hard-hitting Cuban with bricks for hands. It wasn't going to be easy.
All right, here it is. For the first time in over 100 years, the heavyweight bare knuckle title by Police Gazette is on the line.
With everything on the line, Ike Villanueva, the defending BYB champion, stepped into the trigon. The Police Gazette title was there. It was up for grabs. Either he or Gustavo Trujillo would go home with the ultimate title, the one held by John L. Sullivan. Until recent times, bare knuckle boxing had just been things of history, but since its comeback, it has been a hugely popular sport. Gustavo Trujillo and Ike Villanueva were simply the latest chapter in this historied sport. Unfortunately for Ike Villanueva, Gustavo Trujillo used those bricks for hands. He used them and put Ike Villanueva to the canvas multiple times. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be Ike Villanueva leaving with the Police Gazette title. It would be Gustavo Trujillo carrying on the legacy of the great late John L. Sullivan.
Yeah, baby.
Give me a
Let's
punch.
go. Let's go. And you.
So I didn't get the win, man, but the history of bare knuckle boxing goes on from John L. Sullivan all 130 years ago to Ike and Gustavo now. Boxing goes on. The sport goes on. History cannot be denied.
Fight Finders 4 is officially in the books. If you missed Fight Finders 1, 2, or 3, I highly suggest go checking them out to see karate combat, the World Sanda Championships, and capturing a heavyweight title in bare knuckle boxing.